people only remember how they feel. A lot of the time when someone comes back to me and said, hey, you did this trick for me last year, they recall the trick incorrectly. They just remember how they felt about it.
Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, an Arcadia production. This is the show all about how to grow in business, lead with purpose, and live with intention. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends.
Hey, friends. It's me, Jason. Welcome back to the show. So glad you're back with us. We just had a heck of a conversation with Ademola Adelakun, everyone's favorite LinkedIn video creator. He's out there giving us all the tips, tricks, and secrets to creating our own videos, how to do it right, how to do it as a brand, how to grow your own brand. And he shares a lot of that on this episode with us. But more importantly, we talk about what brands get wrong about building trust. And I think a lot of that can resonate with ourselves as well as we're building content maybe for a brand we work for our own brand, right? We talk a lot about why most content feels dead today and how to make people actually believe you when everyone's using the same playbook. Most of you might know this, maybe you don't, but Ademola is also a magician and a really good one at that. I've seen him do some tricks that I have no idea how to even pull those off. But he makes a lot of parallels between like being a magician and telling stories that gain people's trust really fast. And we kick the conversation off with that and really love that parallel and that story within itself. So the video and magic tricks and learning how to build your own business through failure, growth, and your upbringing interest you? Jump on in. And if you like this episode, and any other for that matter, we'd love it if you go out there and give us a like. It all helps. It all adds up. Ademola, my guy, my friend, welcome to the show. My gosh, we've made it happen.
We did. Happy to be here. Good to see you guys.
Great to have you here. Your first time meeting Sam. You guys both wore cream sweaters. I can appreciate that. The friend vibe is strong already.
Absolutely. I needed something to contrast my very dark skin. Show up on camera.
Yes.
You know?
Well, you look beautiful.
Thank you.
I just wanted to blend in completely. So,
long story short, Ademola and I got a chance to work at Reveal. Gosh, 2-3 years ago now. So
yeah.
Got a chance to travel all around together, do some work together, do some videos together, highlighted my video career. But now you're out doing your own thing and just really creating great stories and messages for all the most beloved brands out there. And hey, super proud of the work you've built and the team you're building out there. So really well done, man.
I appreciate it.
Looks like you're having some fun.
Yeah, I'm trying my best, man. I feel like there have been stressful times, but for me, fun is like the most important thing. So I appreciate that. And I'm happy that you guys are seeing that and feeling that.
this is from an outside perspective looking in. So I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw the Ademola and Will magic at Reveal.
Yeah.
And now you're both off doing your own thing and like thriving and doing awesome work. And it's just so fun to see. So I just had to call that out really quickly because that's really great and fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Do you know the history of that? I'll go into it really quickly, but
Please do.
We all love Will.
Will Taylor is who we're talking about for the listeners.
yes, from Audience Led. He and I lived together because we played soccer together in second year university. We became really close friends after that, and we would just make video content all the time. So Snapchat had just come out. It was a thing. And we were just like, what happens if we just show people what's going on in our homes, like unfiltered completely? And we started to grow an audience. We were like locally famous, which I thought was so cool. Waterloo at the time, which is like a city of, I want to say like 100,000 people. We were like, wow, we're famous. We just got used to being our full selves on camera and not being punished for it. And we were like, there has to be a way to bring this to companies in some way, shape, or form, because we feel like everyone that we see online is being super fake or they're posturing. You know, at some point we made a vow to each other to end up in content. And then we were able to do that at like Reveal. And that was like our first way of doing it professionally together. And now we're both running like content agencies, which I think is really cool. But it's been on the radar for us for like 10 years and it's finally happening. So
Thank you for sharing that. I love that story. I had no idea. That's how I met Jason.
oh yeah.
Because it goes way back. So Meerkat came out and I was like, what is this? And I found Jason had posted something. And for those of you that don't know, I am the most motion sick person you will ever meet in your entire life. And Jason's meerkat video almost made me throw up because he was like running with his phone or something. But that love at first sight, that's how it started. So
That's right.
Wow.
Really, really got me that afternoon when I showed up at a happy hour event, and she walks up and she says, "Oh, hey, you took my meerkat virginity today." And I said, "Excuse me, what? And who are you?"
And now here we are. That's beautiful.
and
Now
here we are, friends with
Still
benefits.
Friends with benefits. So
I love that.
anyway, that is the wildest segue into this interview. But let's talk a little bit about kind of the work you are doing and the content you're creating, these videos. And I'm trying to pull on a little thread. I think a lot of people online know you. Like, you're not only are you a great videographer, but you're also a great magician, right? And I found this little thing you said in your bio, of all places. I think I might be the only person that ever reads LinkedIn bios. You say that the same principle that makes an audience lean in during a trick are kind of the same ones that make a buyer trust a brand. All right, so walk us through that. Like, what's happening in those moments when someone leans in?
The main thing to remember, and I feel like we say this all the time, is there's just so much noise. Like, we weren't built to consume all of this information. And when you look at other people, especially on LinkedIn, you're told to kind of act a certain way. So you're told to like dump features on people. You're told to look professional all the time. And when everyone's doing that, no one's really unique. So you end up seeing a bunch of content that's the exact same, and our attention spans continue to shrink. Last year it was 8 seconds. Now it's 4. So we're becoming closer and closer to the average goldfish when it comes to memory.
How lovely.
It's good stuff. We're evolving. That's what we can call it. But the reason I say that is because there's always been this tension between, like, okay, if we have an 8-second attention span updated to 4, does long form content work still? Do people tune into podcasts? Do they tune into 10-minute videos, deep dive explainers? And they still are. So the evidence shows that if we are curious about something or there's a story involved, we'll sit down and watch the whole thing. But if you see something that doesn't grab your attention and it looks like it's more for the company versus you as the consumer, then we'll scroll away from it because we're like, there's a million other pieces of content that were made that look exactly like this. Why is this one any different? So I always tell companies, it doesn't matter how long your content is, as long as you're telling a story that the viewer can relate to. So if you can walk into their world and make them see that you understand them fundamentally, then they'll sit down. They'll sit down for as long as you need them to, because you've shown them that, okay, I understand your world. I understand who's watching. I see you. But if you try and do what everyone else is doing, then it doesn't matter if your video is 4 seconds or 1 hour. People are not going to consume it because it's not story driven. You're talking about yourself, and no one's really interested in that. They're just trying to find something that speaks to them. So when I say the same principles apply, I find with magic, you're bringing someone into your world and also showing them that you understand their world. And you understand it so well that you can change their world in an instant. You can change what they believe in an instant based on the fact that you understand them and you understand how your world is interacting with theirs. So very long explanation, but I just find the best video is story-led and magic is story-led. And the interesting thing is people only remember how they feel. A lot of the time when someone comes back to me and said, hey, you did this trick for me last year, they recall the trick incorrectly. They just remember how they felt about it. But it stuck with them, right? And that should be the goal. Like, stick with people by resonating with them,
What keeps coming to mind for me is like everybody's trying to follow this script, follow this this version online, and I think that that's going to get worse and worse as we're putting everything we do and think through Claude or whatever, and so it's just going to become more and more of the same. And I think I agree with everything you're saying, that story is the through line. Story is how humanity has evolved, in this case for the worst. But I think it's one thing to say, tell a story. It's another thing to actually do that. Do you think that some people are innate storytellers? And do you think it's a learned skill or a inherited skill?
I think it's a learned skill.
Okay. Well, that's positive. So we're saying there's hope.
There is hope. There's a piece of advice that someone gave to me a couple of years ago because I said to them, his name's Darren Fenton. He used to work in Hollywood. And I said, if there's one word that comes to mind that should be the through line for every story, what should it be? And he said transformation. That really stuck with me because what he made me realize is that every good story that you see out there, you started here and you ended up there, right? If you started here and you had a dream of ending up here, that's a great story. If you started here and you had a dream of ending up here, but you changed direction along the way, that's still a good story. But the point of it was basically if you can show some sort of transformation, and typically speaking, if you're in B2B and you're trying to sell something, you have to sell their transformation, where they want to be. So telling a story, if you focus on that one thing, then you'll tell a great one. And I think that's a learned skill, just thinking that way and thinking through that lens.
Because I'm hearing you talk and having been in this work for a while, it's like, well, this is the pain point I solve. And I feel like that could be construed with transformation of like, I'm going to help you solve said problem.
Right.
But just saying, here's the pain point I solved isn't a story. That doesn't bring people in. So how do you think those two things are different?
I think what you're saying is part of the story, right? So you can say to someone, this is the pain point that I solve, but I feel like you're kind of starting in the middle there. But if you're like, here's you probably experience this thing every day. It frustrates you for these reasons. You wake up thinking this anxious thought every day. I can see you. I can see the way that you live and I understand your world. So I actually built something for you. This is the pain point that I solve, right? People are much more likely to lean into that than you kind of just being like, hey, I do this, because everyone else is saying, hey, I do this. And you feel like you're being pitched all the time, similar to like in the DMs when someone's like, you didn't ask, but here's this thing that I do. But if they'd taken the time to be like, hey, I looked through your profile, I saw that you're doing these things and they were actually right, then I'd be more likely to respond to those things. So I think what you're saying is part of it, but there has to be like a beginning, like something right before what you mentioned, and then it becomes a story.
Safe to say that for following your narrative here, like it's all transformation is the through line, right? And your goal is to build trust here. Do you almost have to start off from the perspective of like there is no trust, like they don't trust you?
Yeah, every single time.
Because like I almost wonder, like, okay, I've got my job here is to transform. Like they don't trust me, they don't believe what I say. So like, how do I build the story in a way that A, relates to them and shows that I understand the problem and that I can solve their problem, but B, also like builds trust in the first 4 seconds?
Yeah, it takes time. Like I just made a video about this that I'll be releasing next week. And I'm trying to remember the exact language that I used, but I was comparing the titles, like what every B2B SaaS company needs to know about video in 2026, to the title, you just got burned by a freelancer that does video. Here's what to do next, right? And I was saying that the first one will get more views, but then people will feel like, okay, this company is going to try and sell me something after this video. But the second one speaks directly to someone who has been through an experience that you can speak to. And they're more likely to lean in because they're like, there's no way that this company knew, like, how did they know that that's an experience that I've had? And they're more likely to be like, let me see what they have to say because it feels like they understand me. The reason I bring that up is because I feel like there's a way to position it for trust immediately, versus like, okay, this is like a general title. If it applies to you, most of you are not going to know that because you're going to feel like, who is this company that's trying to tell me what B2B SaaS companies should be doing in 2026, versus speaking to my direct experience and showing me that you've been in my shoes and that you are probably the right person to solve my problem. So to kind of tie a bow on that, I feel like establishing trust looks a bit different now, and it looks more like kind of joining the conversation in your viewer's head and saying, hey, you probably think about these things, and showing them that you've been there or that you understand them, and going from there. But I can get into like how I think about the full funnel in a bit if you're curious about how we think about content on our side.
I mean, I think what you said is really interesting because it's a version of niching down, but niching down through the lens of like, I'm thinking about how those titles could be construed very differently. Everything a B2B needs to know is like, we've all seen that title. We've all used that title. We've all clicked on that title. But the other one could be like, when video falls flat or whatever, which can feel like it's not personal, but when you attach a specific circumstance to that, to your point, it becomes a story that people can relate to. To follow up on that, do you think that building trust, not only does there have to be a story attached, but the spray and pray is out the door?
It 100% is out the door. I think you have to, like you said, niche down and get really specific about who you think your best customers will be. And if I can sort of simplify it, I would say top of funnel, like nobody knows you. You really need to focus on misconceptions and giving as much value as you can without asking for anything in return. And as you go further down the funnel, like middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, what you're doing is once you've shown them, okay, like you probably think about this problem this way, top of funnel, here are some misconceptions that you believe. Here are some ways in which people who have this problem think about this thing. Once people are like, okay, they seem to know what they're talking about. As you move down the funnel, you can get more specific and show how your company solves that problem. And then bottom of funnel is like where you do the actual selling. So to bridge that gap between trust and no trust, you have to really understand what someone who is interacting with you for the first time would believe and try and break through that. And then as you get to know them, when they get to know you, then you can become more specific and have more like hyper targeted, I'm trying to sell you stuff. And once the trust is built.
This is a very elementary question, but like, what do you believe it is about video that allows that is that bridge? Like, why does it have to be video?
I feel like it kind of humanizes it. When you're reading a wall of text or you're reading help docs or things like that, emails, you always feel like you're being sold. For example, with newsletters, there are a few where I'm like excited to read them every week because I don't really feel like they're going to try and sell me something. And then if they did, I'm like, well, they've given me so much value already that I feel comfortable buying from these people. And I'll give you an example of an experience that I had. So like, do you guys know Justin Welsh?
The name sounds super familiar.
Yeah, I mean, he's just this dude that everyone used to talk about. I don't really see his stuff anymore, but he was like the LinkedIn influencer guy 3 or 4 years ago.
Big
You
on
know,
X now, posting all of his business tactics and
oh, really?
stuff to do. Yeah, he's all over X.
Maybe this is just me and people I've spoken to, but I ended up buying one of his courses about 3, 4 years ago about how to operate on LinkedIn. And I'd only ever read his stuff and I thought it was really good. And I realized as soon as I saw his video content, like the course that he put together, I didn't feel like it was him. I don't know. Like I felt very disconnected because I'd never heard him speak. I'd never seen him on camera. So it was just a jarring experience, right? So I feel like we as human beings often need someone to attach to when it comes to like a business or a brand that we feel comfortable because in a lot of ways when we transact with a company that has like a strong brand and we see the same people, we almost feel like we're buying from our friends. But it's a lot harder to do that through text is what I feel. And that's why video works so well.
A lot of brands obviously don't. You've kind of worked for some pretty notable brands, both in-house and with your agency. What do you think it is that most brands fundamentally misunderstand about how trust actually is formed?
Features.
Because they're not allowing that person or that voice to become. So there's something that they're missing there.
Sam, you hit the nail on the head. Like they think it's formed through the best service or the best product, right? So they're like, if we constantly show up as, okay, we are world class, we do this, we are better than the competitors that you're considering for X, Y, and Z reasons. It's sort of elementary. Like, you know, when you're in school, your self-worth is kind of determined by your grades. I feel like a lot of companies operate that way. But I think what people don't realize is sometimes we're okay with good enough. You know, like if this tool is getting what I need done, I'm not necessarily going to go for best in class and like waste a bunch of features that you spent a bunch of time making when this thing already works for me. But the way that we operate is, okay, if I can make my product slightly better than my competitors, then everyone will come to me. But everyone's kind of used to operating this way. So a lot of brands, they approach it with, hey, we have better features and better services than all these other people, when they should be leaning into, here's our unique voice and here's how we think about the world. And if you think like us and you're like us, then you should come work with us. But not enough brands kind of tap into that like uniqueness, I would say.
How are you helping brands like not just tap into it, but like find it? Like, how are you helping them identify it? If it's not just you, but like you want them to like, hey, this should be somebody internal who knows the product, who knows this, and like this is what you should be doing. So like, how do you help companies find that voice, person, uniqueness?
It's going back to fundamentals. Like I find 90% of the people that we work with don't actually know their ideal customer profile. So things are going well. They're selling to people.
Like they can't answer you or they have it wrong.
They can't answer me because they have it wrong. So I guess
Okay.
so yeah, I mean both, I guess. And they have it wrong because they don't realize that their avatar constantly evolves, right? Because there's so many things that come into the market. They may have done this exercise like 4 years ago and they're still trying to sell the same way. And things are still growing, but they don't realize that they're not as tapped in as they should be to their ICP.
Which just stands for ideal customer profile.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting exercise when you say things like, okay, like you're making content now. Where does most of your ideal customer profile watch it? On the train, as they're commuting to work? Like, do they watch it on YouTube? What do they do? What sort of like activities are they into, right? Like if you were to create a person around this, what would they look like? And they have a hard time answering that. So because of that, their marketing is like a bit weird and it's not as dialed in as it should be. And I feel like they're losing a lot of opportunity at top of the funnel because it seems outdated what they do. To answer the question, I was just going to say like, that's what they miss. They don't have a good understanding of their ideal customer profile. And that really works against them in time.
We've all worked in situations like this, but do you think being behind a brand makes that harder to see? Like versus having a third party come in and have an unbiased perspective on things?
I think sometimes, yeah, because people put together like brand guidelines and voice of the customer documents that are outdated and you're kind of trained on those things and you just trust the data that you get to make decisions about marketing. And then what we miss is you should just talk to your customers like once a quarter to figure out if this is still correct. But a lot of people that are coming in or running their marketing teams take that as gospel and they're like, we just got to stick to the brand guidelines. We got to stick to the voice of the customer and just keep going. The story that they tell in meetings is it looks good, but a lot of the time there's no correlation between types of marketing efforts that they put out and the sales that they bring in. So I think it's important to have a third party to force you to go and talk to customers and look at the information in a very objective way, not the way that suits the brand guidelines and voice of customer that you have internally already.
I think about this from the context of one of my previous experiences a few years ago. You're working a lot in the enterprise space, and this whole concept that the enterprise has to look, feel, and smell different, right? Can't be fun because, we're marketing to enterprise customers and, they're buttoned up, right?
Right.
We got to church this stuff.
This
up
is
a little bit,
professional.
right? It feels like because maybe it's going to undermine our credibility as an enterprise software. I'm starting to see a few more kind of break that mold. But how do you think about that tension, and how do you kind of help them kind of break through that noise or that thought, I guess?
Dude, it's hard. A lot of them don't want to change their ways and they're super resistant to breaking that. Like you look at companies like Ramp and their marketing recently, or Liquid Death, which is a B2C brand, just for those listening. I'm starting to see more of like the Anthropics and Ramps and those types of like enterprise brands that are coming out and having fun with it. And they're really benefiting from it. I'm really hoping they lead the charge on, what does professional really mean? And like, can we break through that and still have customers? One of our biggest clients, they struggle with this quite a bit because they want to be perceived in a certain way. And I understand they're like in the security space. So I get why they need to look reliable, professional, all these things. But I think they overestimate the damage that one campaign can have if you have fun with it. And they're like, well, if we are the type of company that doesn't take our marketing seriously and we're not always serious, then we'll attract customers that are not good for us. And it's just not true. I guess my view on it is we overestimate what will happen if we try to have fun with a campaign and how we'll be perceived. But I think as long as the service delivers, it doesn't really matter how you show up. And people are also looking for more fun and human content because they want to be entertained when they consume things online, no matter what the platform is now. Like we're seeing LinkedIn change from like extremely tight-assed thought leadership to like people having fun. They're benefiting from it because people just want to know that they're working with humans at the end of the day. And what better way to do that than with a marketing campaign? But there's still a lot of resistance.
I think it's going to have to, especially as like more and more of like today's decision makers, buyers, and champions are those that have come up again, like to your point, like Snapchat, Meerkat, social media's evolution. Like those are going to be the buyers, and they're the ones who have kind of been dialed into this YouTube upbringing, right? And so they're used to seeing a better source of content, more engaging content, storytelling. and stuff like that. And I think if anything, the more, I guess, you guys' generation comes up, right, the more they're going to be expected to give better stories.
One thing to add to that too is like what typically happens at these enterprise companies is you have like a new school CMO or marketing director that has to constantly interface with like an old school CEO, CFO, CRO. And they're like, I'm not going to put my job on the line to like push this thing that I know will work. So they're fighting against like people that have always done things a traditional way, and it makes it so much harder.
I hadn't even thought about this until you said it, but you brought up Anthropic. I think we should do a whole case study on this. You talked about how in their marketing they're being more fun, and I wonder, I mean, I'm sure it's incredibly intentional, but like I feel like it's even more important for Anthropic to infuse humanity in their marketing given their product and to like help kind of break down that barrier of acceptance in the world. I'd love your perspective on that, but then further, I'd love your perspective on AI in video and if that is concerning to you in eroding trust, because human clones are now a thing of today. They're not even a thing of the future.
It's pretty crazy to watch, huh? Like we're dangerously close to, I don't even know if you guys are real right now. You could be out
We're not.
somewhere else. But it's getting really
Never have
close.
been.
Right? Wait, I met you in person. What's happening? But
You thought you were a magician.
that would be crazy. If that is the case, don't reveal it to me because I can't handle that mentally. Anthropic, that campaign was brilliant for a few reasons. Number one, like you said, they have to bring humanity into it in some way. They position themselves perfectly against their competitors, right? And everyone that watched that campaign through to the end, they're going to be retargeted with middle of funnel content as to like why they're better than competition, right? So, I mean, it was a perfect campaign.
Can you give a thesis of what that campaign is in case somebody hasn't seen it?
Yeah. So they released 4 ads, and the ads were in different scenarios. Number one was like in a coffee shop or like a diner with 2 people talking to each other. And the one person was asking the other person for advice, and that person was giving them very generic responses, the types that other LLMs would give you. And at the end of it, they're like, what is happening? At the end of the ad, it's just like 30 seconds long, and it was like, ChatGPT is introducing ads, Claude never will, that sort of thing, something to that effect. And I just thought it was great because now you have like a Pepsi Coke situation where everyone's like, what is this Claude thing? And as they're doing their research, they're getting material to kind of justify moving. So you don't typically have top of funnel campaigns that get people to middle of funnel that quickly. You normally need like 4 to 5 pieces of content. But I just thought it was so brilliant because they chose an enemy, and you don't normally choose a competitor, which is why it was so compelling. Like when I talk to companies, I say you can choose an approach, you can choose a belief or a competitor to fight against. And we can get into that more later if you want. But they chose a competitor, which is the most compelling, and they did it in a tasteful way because they didn't lie. They just said, hey, this company is introducing ads, we won't. And that immediately got so many people to shift over and look into Claude. And it was just really well done. Like I'm a huge fan of that campaign. The other part of your question, if you remember it, after this hour that was spoken, do you remember?
AI in video now, and like how it's eroding trust with human clones and all that.
I'm still finding it really hard to imagine a world in which it's indistinguishable from humans, but I know it's very possible. I think that we're going to have to be really careful, not try and trick people into believing that they're interacting with a real human being, because that will erode trust almost immediately. If someone feels like, okay, well, I've been talking to this sales rep or I've been talking to this person, and then they find out that that person is not real, I think it will do some damage, is my opinion. And the same way that we treat like Instagram and TikTok ads right now, where we don't even care what's being said to us, we kind of just skip them. I feel like the moment someone sees that something is AI generated content, they're kind of like, oh, fuck this, I don't want to watch it, right? The tools that are coming out are great because they make our workflows easier. Like my team uses a lot of AI in their workflows for like motion graphics and like super cool visual effects that would have taken days to do, and then now they take hours. But I think at the base level, like where people are looking to like reduce their marketing teams to just AI, that content is going to become super commonplace in the next few months. And people are just going to kind of skip over that and not really want to engage with it because they know that it's not real. I think that if we are using AI as part of our workflow and we're still showing some sort of effort, then we really stand to benefit from it. But if it's just like AI generated content and people know that this stuff is just kind of releasing on autopilot, then it just does more harm than good, because you start to be known as the company that just pumps out fake shit, and you're spending marketing dollars on stuff that's not effective. So I'm with it. I'm not against it. I would say I think it requires human input, but AI alone, it's not really going to build the trust that people are looking for.
I talk to a lot of companies on a weekly basis that it's all just the input is AI inputting into more AI, and there is absolutely no human element to it. So like, it's like a sick cycle that we can just get stuck on.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Ademola. Curious to know like how much of your upbringing, right? I know like we've known each other for a while, followed your LinkedIn for a while. So like in some of the work your mom does, like and how much of your upbringing, like how much of that does it influence how you think about communication and like how you turn brand messages into trust?
Yeah, I would say traditional Nigerian family. Like obviously we have our sort of immigrant culture where there's a hierarchy. Parents don't really communicate to their kids. I would say my parents were really, really good with that. But there were times where if they got really frustrated with my brother and I, they'd just be like, whatever we say goes, and we don't have to explain why, right? And I always found that kind of frustrating as a kid, because I was like, there's a reason for everything. Why not just explain the reason? And it kind of got me into the habit of like asking why a bunch of times to myself and other people, and getting to like the root thing. And I found whenever I got to the root thing, the solutions kind of found themselves. But I feel like a lot of us kind of operate under the assumption that we know why we're doing things, or we know the reason for things, and we haven't thought deeply enough about why that thing exists or why it occurs. But if you get down to the base level, then you can make real changes. And the way that I approach companies, whenever they're like, what's the first step? What videos do we make? And I say, actually, we're just going to figure out if you're like, if you even have like the right people that you're targeting. They're like, that seems pretty basic. And I'm like, yeah, it is basic and we need it. So I would say like, I have this relationship with my parents now where we can communicate about anything. But back then I was the kid that was like, why? And they found it super annoying at the time.
I was going to say, how'd your parents feel about that? Being a parent myself.
Yeah. Especially for maybe being a parent where you maybe not supposed to question why. Like if it's
right.
supposed to be in that tradition, then like you don't question why. And it sounds like what your ultimate question is like, why does it have to be that way? Which sounds like the way that you operate now from a professional standpoint.
Absolutely. I feel that it's better for us to understand the real reason that something's happening versus thinking that we know and then running the wrong direction and then not solving anything. So yeah, I would say it's been really helpful, and I do it in a less annoying way now with my parents, so they're cool with it.
But you're still doing it.
Yeah, I'm still doing it all the time.
Is that ever met with resistance with your clients? Like, are they just like, just get to the point?
Oh yeah, but I've found ways to do it in a like shorter capacity so they don't get fatigued by me asking a ton of questions. But I say to them, like, it's really important for me. Sometimes I don't know the answer, right? And I will tell them, like, I have to ask you these questions so we can uncover stuff, right? But then there are other times where I do know the answer, but I have to guide them there, because if I say it, then it's not their idea. So it is met with resistance sometimes, but I'm like, I'm sorry, we have to get through this. And I let them know at the beginning of the meeting, like, this is going to be painful for a number of reasons, but we have to get through it. And then you'll thank me for it later. So that's how I approach it typically.
I'm curious if you're doing this consciously, but the way you just shared that process of working with your clients is like you're bringing them on a journey. You're helping them tell a story to themselves. So like, which is obviously what you do for work. Have you thought about that? Is that a conscious decision? Like, are you just a natural storyteller, or was that purposeful?
Well, I'd like to think so. I've never thought about it that way. I thought of it more as like, hey, if you understand the reason you get there by yourself, like I'd never associated the word journey with that. So I love that, and I'll be stealing it. And every time I use it,
please do.
You get 5% royalty, just so you know. Excellent. It's recorded.
What a great Friday.
But I don't know. I think maybe because I went to school for psych. I wanted to become a therapist, and I just
Oh,
noticed that like, yeah, yeah. So I noticed for me whenever, because I used to be offended when I'd give advice and people wouldn't take it. And I was like, what happens if I just ask questions in a way that gets the person to the thing that I would have said anyway? And they would always take their own advice if they would say it themselves. So instead of me giving you the answer in a minute, I'll talk to you for 3 hours and then you walk away with having solved it yourself, right? And I just found it led to way better solutions. And I'm like, this is what therapists are doing all the time. I think I'm not trained, but like if I can bring that to my clients and they come to their own conclusions, I think it will be better for them, and it has been. So I think the journey thing, I love that. So I'm going to be using that moving forward, but I hadn't thought about it that way.
you're talking about how you're asking questions to lead somebody somewhere. What do you think makes a good question?
I think if you can get to the motivation behind something or get to what they were really thinking, as an example, I don't ask people like, how was your day? I'll be like, what was the most exciting thing about today? And what was the lowest thing about today? And then just makes them think more specifically. So I would say specificity, and then making sure that it can't be answered with a yes or a no. I think those are the subconscious rules that I operate under, and they lead to way better conversations.
It's interesting. We took a like something called connections course. I think we may have talked about this on a previous episode or something, but the art of asking questions was kind of part of it, and you really keep the conversation going and help people understand like that motivation behind what they're talking about is to always ask how and what questions. It's like you phrase it, how do you feel about this? How, what does that look like? And you kind of, instead of just asking yes or no questions, you want to ask those that kind of keep the conversation open and moving, and kind of also from the question asker, it really shows that, hey, I'm being intentional in my listening. I'm asking these questions that keep it open.
I love that. Connections course, you said? A connection course?
Yeah, it's excellent. We'll drop the link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What I was going to say a second ago is that what I find interesting between like kind of why does it have to be this way and your journey, right? You've recently, seemed like you've recently gotten more vocal on LinkedIn about, the 13-time failed founder. I think I saw recently on LinkedIn, which I really appreciate, like, someone sharing that, like, hey, I'm going to try things my way, and I'm going to keep asking why along the way and keep trying and keep reiterating and keep this journey going. Right. I think, LinkedIn needs more of that also. But like right now, what I'm very curious to know about Ademola is like, what's the version of success that you're chasing right now? Not like the LinkedIn version, but the real version of success.
I agree with you. I feel like more of that is needed. And I feel like I've purged my feed of people that are like, oh, I'm doing this great thing, or I've been successful my entire life. And, I hate that because I'm like, it's just not true. Like none of you and anyone that's seen any form of success has fallen flat on their face multiple times. It's just a reality, right? For me, honestly, I feel really happy with where I'm at right now because my goal, instead of it becoming like financial or career oriented, or like I want to be in this position, I want to be seen this way, I was like, how do I afford myself as much time as possible with family, or as much time as possible with friends, or traveling, that sort of thing. And like, my partner and I travel a few times a year.
Like big
To
trips that look very fun.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
want to travel
I
with you.
appreciate. Yeah, you guys are welcome anytime. We're headed to Thailand next month. Open invitation to you guys.
Nice. A 6 and 4-year-old will love Thailand.
They actually probably would.
I think you would. It's a fun place.
Yeah.
For me, I changed the goal, and I think if I can comment on this quickly, what really changed my mind, my whole life that I've been trying to build a company, I was convinced that in order to live your dream life, you need to be like a multi millionaire. You need to have like the private plane, the private jet. I'm not even a materialistic person, but I was like, yeah, those are the things that you need to have. Like it's a checklist, right?
That's the story we've been told.
Right. And then I would see a lot of these people start to come out and say, I sacrificed a ton of time with family. I started reading about the regrets of the death, like the dying, like the 5 biggest regrets. And, one of them in there is like, I wish I hadn't worked so hard, or like, I wish I'd spent more time with family, or I wish I'd told that person how I felt about them. And as I read that, I was like, you know what? Like, I wonder what will happen if I can just reduce the amount of working time that I had, that I put out, and find a way to cover all of my necessities, have a bit of fun, travel a bit. How would my life look and feel? And I started to work towards that. And I realized, A, you don't need to be a multimillionaire to do that. B, you don't really need to have material possessions or like buy the house that, like, you don't need to live the normal way that people tell you to. Like you said, there's a script that's not the way that you put it, but you're like, that's what we're told. I was just like, if I can build a lifestyle business that will allow me to kind of live on my own terms, I think I'll be happy with that. So we have like a really small team. We're 10 people. And we all have fun with each other. Like we hang out. There's no like hierarchy. It's very flat. And we realize that we're not saving lives with what we do. Like B2B SaaS will survive without better video, but
Maybe.
yeah, maybe. But I mean, to answer your question, I feel like the version of life that I have come to love and enjoy is just like, how can I minimize what I'm doing, like the amount of work that I'm doing, and still have an impact, still feel like I'm bringing some sort of value, and also spend as much time with family and friends as I can, because I don't want to look back and regret not having that time. We're not all here forever, unfortunately.
I love this so much. I think this kind of transformation is going on in the RB household. That has been over the last year or so. I think it's an exercise that a lot of people don't even consider is something that should be taken into account, but like defining what success looks like for you as an individual or as a family or whatever that unit is. And to your point, I think it's so often just like the poster of success, and that's what we're all chasing. We've seen this a million times, but people get there and they're like, wait, this is it?
This is it? Yeah.
And so being intentional about sitting down and deciding what that looks like for you, I think is one of the most important things. And then designing your life around that, because to your point, you don't have to have a private plane to spend more time with your family.
Makes me think about that conversation we recently had with Kyle Lacey. Like he got there and realized it was kind of all for nothing. He was extraordinarily burnt out, and he was like still in his 30s. Who wants to get there and experience that? I don't think that's what we're striving for. Then like it's all empty.
It's crazy because like I feel like there's always a forcing function. For me, it was losing my grandma during COVID. So I was always too busy to give her a 10-minute call, right? Every time she would call me, she's like, oh, you never call. Why don't you call? And I'm like, there's time. Like, I just don't have time right now. And then time passes and you don't have the opportunity anymore. And I told myself I never want to experience that again. And I hate that I had to experience that to learn that lesson. But I feel like it's just human nature to kind of take things for granted like that. And then once you experience something like that, yeah. So that was really painful for me. And I couldn't even visit her during, like, no one could go anywhere. The world stopped. And when I look back, it's like, you're an idiot because you were working at Shopify and you worked 2 hours a day, gamed 6 hours a day, and you couldn't find 10 minutes to call your, I hope no one from Shopify ever watches. But I'm like,
they are not our ICP, don't worry.
Good. But I'm like, you had the time. Like there was no excuse. And I miss her a lot. And I just realized that that's what's important, just your relationships and spending time with the people that you love. When you go through something like that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one on this call that has been through something like that, you kind of start to look at life differently and what you're pursuing differently.
I think it's the most admirable version of success. So,
thanks. Yeah.
All right. Let's bring this home. Last, final question for you, Ademola. Say you are training a younger version of yourself, a younger Ademola, maybe shorter hair, learning some magic, right? Just discovered they can make things happen through video. What's the one thing you're going to tell them that you wish someone had told you?
You don't need all that equipment to tell a good story.
There you go.
Said like a true videographer.
Right. Who now has all the equipment.
Yeah, it's in a box.
Thank you for saying that, because I also am telling Jason that often.
I've told Ademola our hacks. We've got, paint can lights for lighting that costs $6 at Home Depot.
Right? Oh, yeah. That's what I would say.
That's good advice. Just get started. Use whatever you have. I love it, man. I've appreciated the open conversation.
Me too.
Appreciate you, all you bring to LinkedIn, to those of us who follow you, who know you. I think you're a gem of a human, my guy.
I agree.
Thank you, man. I feel the same way about you guys. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's really good to catch up. Sorry, I haven't been in touch for so long, but I will be changing that in the near future.
Hey, man. We make it happen. Keep it going.
Yeah.
We're still here.
Absolutely.
That's all that matters.
Ademola, if somebody wants to learn more about you, is LinkedIn the place, or where should they go?
Yeah, LinkedIn's definitely the place. So Ademola Adelakun, Mbet. I'm sure it'll be in the notes later. I put that because there's more than one Ademola Adelakun, so I was like, I'll just put this in there. Yeah, Nigerians are everywhere. Anyway, yeah. So if you wanna get in touch, feel free to message me there. I see all my messages. So yeah,
Highly encourage you to do it.
Ademola, we're sitting across the country via screen, and I can still feel how authentic and warm your energy is. So thank you for sharing that with us and bringing it to the world. So
I really appreciate you. Thank you.
friends, I hope you enjoyed today. Go be great, and we'll see you next time.
See y'all.